Hello and welcome back. I am SkavenDan and this is my YouTube channel. This is my Darktide review. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and liking the video, and you can join the Discord. You should find the links below. I'm just going to do this kind of ad hoc, and this is going to play over footage of my actual Darktide gameplay. So what you currently see is the mission select screen. So if you're kind of new to Fatshark, you'll not know that each of the bars represents a different difficulty level. There's 1 to 5, and there's different kinds of missions, which is what each symbol represents here. These change, so there's grimoires and script recoveries, and this one represents endless hordes. There's also another mode called Lights Out, but we'll touch on all that in a moment. So this is just going to play in the background while I talk, obviously, so you've got something to watch. So I guess I should start at the beginning. I wasn't actually planning on covering Darktide. The 40K franchise can be very hit and miss, as you may or may not be aware. They're not very stingy on who they hand their license out to, and as a result, there have been quite a number of dubious releases over the years. But I am actually quite pleasantly surprised by Darktide because, well, it is a big improvement on Vermintide in my personal opinion. Because Vermintide always was kind of restrictive. You had to choose one of 4 classes, whereas in Darktide you can have any number of the same class. As you'll probably see in one of these runs here, we do tend to favour ogres in my playgroup, and it doesn't really matter. Now each character does have its drawbacks and not. So you need a mixed party realistically for the higher difficulties, but for the lower difficulties I think you can manage with just about any combination, really. So I guess we got to address the elephant in the room, right? Some people have had big problems with Darktide. As an actual game beta release, some people have been completely unable to play it for whatever reason. Now, I have put the big flashing official partner there because I have actually partnered with Darktide to produce Darktide content, but that doesn't affect this review or anything I'm saying right now. This is all my personal opinion, and all I can honestly say is that I have a pretty archaic machine, which I'm sure the God Emperor would approve of. And for whatever reason, I really didn't have many issues. In fact, the only crash I ever seemed to get was when I was turning the game off. And if I'm turning the game off, I don't think it really matters that it comes up with a "oop, I've crashed" or "this is not responding" kind of message. So just for context, I'm using an Intel 7th generation CPU, which is a 7700K series, and a 1080 NVIDIA graphics card. It's not overclocked, and despite them saying update your graphics cards before you play this game, I actually didn't do that. I just went with the old philosophy of if I believe enough, then it will work. And that was pretty much my motto for a lot of the Darktide games as well. If we believe we can do it, maybe we can. And we had a good laugh with quite a lot of that. And we'll be doing some high level, much difficult, well, difficult games than we have been doing. Level 4s and level 5s on the stream soon, I hope. So if you want to subscribe and check out that content, feel free. So that is the main crux. Some people had those issues. I don't know exactly what it is. As someone who works in IT, I imagine it was a combination of server connections and areas and the number of people sharing servers. It really is hard to pin down without Fatshark actually telling us exactly what was going on. But I imagine it was region and specific card based, because it did seem to be certain people running certain system, AMD graphics cards, shall we say, seemed to be people that were complaining the most about the situation. But I can't actually prove any of that, it's just my speculation. And I imagine that is why we had the open beta, right? It was so they could test out the servers and test things out, because Vermintide ran locally. It connected one person to another person to another person to play the game, which is why Vermintide kind of lagged from time to time, which kind of made it a bit jarring for me at times. But Darktide is all run through a server, so you have to connect and you have to wait for the server. Now that can give you a couple of minutes in between things, which can be kind of annoying at times, but it's a much better way to do it, and I think a lot more companies could learn from that. So in terms of an actual game release, yeah, I really had very few issues. We did levels 1 to 4, we've done all the different mission runs, and it actually has been surprisingly fun. I was kind of blown away by how much I actually liked Darktide in the end, because it wasn't something I was planning on getting invested in, and now it's gonna be a semi-regular on the channel. I know some people might not like that because they like my other content, but you can rest assured that my other content will be still continuing on the channel. It'll just be trying out various different formats as things progress through and just see what works best for me. So would I recommend this game, I guess, is where I'm going with this. And honestly, since Steam has a refund policy, I just say get it on Steam, try it. If it doesn't work, refund it. You can do a level in about 25-30 minutes if you don't know what you're doing. We actually got our speed run of levels down to doing a mission in 17 minutes as a group. So we would find that between 17 and 22 minutes you could do a level. The boss fights can be quite challenging if you don't know what you're doing. They've added a dark mode which turns the lights off. Now I've had some people complain about that, saying that it was just too dark and they were unable to turn the game brightness up, and that if you've got bad eyes, that's probably not what you're looking for. And one person even went as far as to say if this is what they'd first played, they'd have refunded the game straight away because it was just really dark and that wasn't good for their eyes, which I can understand. Some people do have eye issues. I do think you should be able to configure the dark mode. That being said, you can actually determine which levels you're going to do from the mission select screen. If you don't select quick play, you can choose the specific parameters of the missions you're doing. I guess the biggest problem I had with Darktide was when a few people disconnected randomly from the game, and the server was that keen to fill the empty spot that had been generated that it threw somebody else back in. Now, normally this wouldn't be too much of a problem, but when you combine this with playing on endless hordes so that the enemies just keep spawning and spawning and spawning, you have to vote to kick out the person who joined to get your friend back into the game. And while this is doing, you're under almost constant attack, and it just became incredibly frustrating. But we are told now that you'll be able to set it to friends only or private mode or just no rejoins at all. So that is a feature I look forward to when the game is officially out. Is there anything bad that I can say about this game? I don't want to sound biased because I didn't buy it. I got given the key, but honestly, I don't have a fault with the game. Like, you can play it in short bursts. I guess my main issue would be that you have to have 4 players, right? If anything, and that some of the mission bonuses seem stupid. Scriptures, for example, are a set of 3 scriptures that you have to find on the map. You return them all, you get a bonus. But there's no downside for collecting scriptures other than it takes up an item slot, meaning you can't carry a pack, which would either be ammo or a health kit, and that is it. Whereas grimoires, which is the one you see here, if you pick up a grimoire, the top bar of your life starts to be eaten away and turn purple, which means it's corrupted and thus cannot be healed unless you actually use a healing station. Now that is a real downside, but picking up 2 grimoires is not as rewarding, shall we say, for the amount of punishment you currently receive. So I guess in that regard it is still finding its feet in balance and everything else, and they're adding more things. Like, there's going to be a whole other area, and I imagine more stuff they haven't told us that's going to be added when it's actually fully released. The demon host they added took people by surprise as well, but I think most people enjoyed the demon host. It was a random encounter with basically a cultist who had been made ready to be occupied and possessed by a demon, and then that demon came through him and spawned on the map if you interacted with the demon host. So my advice basically is, if you don't want to deal with a demon host, it's a dude sat on the floor. You'll know when you see it. Don't touch him, don't shoot him, stay wide of him, and you'll not have to fight him. But should you have to, if you actually engage with him, he will basically go for whoever triggered him and activated him and kill them. And once he has killed them, he will go for someone else. And once he's killed 2 people, he will effectively despawn. Now, we didn't really have that problem, and I didn't figure that out myself because I play an Ogryn and we just tanked the heck out of him. And the Ogryns actually have like a unhittable mode where they just become practically invulnerable by tanking behind a shield. So I aggroed him, we tanked him, and the team took him down. He also seems to spawn equal to the number of difficulty level you've got it on, so if it's a level 3 difficulty mission, he'll spawn 3 times. At least that's what it felt like to me. And there's special resources to craft items and such, and I imagine there'll be more items and cosmetics as the game goes on. Ultimately, it seems like a very well-rounded game. Each class has its own kind of special. The Ogre is big and brutish and can tank, but that has the downside of he doesn't have extremely long-range stuff, and he gets in the way because he's big, right? He blocks line of sight for veterans and psykers, which makes it hard for them to pick off Tykers. Veterans, very good sniping. Psykers, very good like targeting people with the warp, charging up attacks and then discharging those attacks, which has got like a balanced system to keep the force in check so that your head doesn't explode. And then you have the Fanatic, which is kind of the opposite of an Ogryn for a combatant. They're really good at dealing with hordes. They can have a flamethrower which can literally just burn through entire waves of enemies, while the Ogryns can focus very heavily on dueling the large specials that appear. So yeah, would I recommend this game? Absolutely, but do make sure you test it out on your system before you purchase it, because ultimately all PCs are a little bit different and it completely depends on your setup. Also, there is some like blooming and lens flare stuff in the settings that you might want to turn off. I've seen a lot of people say that that really improves the settings of the game. But all in all, I've had a really good and pleasant experience with the game. I've basically clogged 80 hours as an Ogryn. I actually expected the ladder to reset as such when the actual game comes out, but we're being told that isn't going to happen now, which I kind of wish it did, in all honesty, because I've not recorded all of the footage of me leveling my Ogre, and I kind of wish I had now. So I might actually level a new Ogryn just to capture it all on stream, if nothing else. It depends how many slots we can have for his characters, I suppose. But yeah, so that is my full review of Darktide. Let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, if you're looking for someone to play Darktide with, or if you've got feedback or suggestions, you can leave a comment below. There should be a Discord link if you want to join the community. We do play like basically a couple of games a night of Darktide as it currently stands, because it's a nice fun little ad hoc game. You can slip in between different things. So I hope you found that informative, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye.